Only one very specific type of person tends to stay in a relationship with someone who shows strong narcissistic behaviors for a long time, and it is rarely the person most people would expect. Those who appear tough on the outside often become exhausted trying to fight constant emotional battles. People with clear, healthy boundaries usually recognize unhealthy patterns early and leave before lasting damage takes hold. The deeper question is not why one person is stronger than another. It is why certain people remain when others walk away. The answer often begins long before the relationship itself. Human beings are naturally drawn toward patterns that feel familiar, even when those patterns are painful. Someone who repeatedly creates controlling or emotionally unhealthy relationships often notices people whose emotional history makes them more likely to tolerate confusion, inconsistency, or emotional overwork. This is not because they deserve it or because they consciously choose it. It happens because old survival patterns quietly shape present-day relationships. Stay with me because the very quality that once kept you trapped may also become the reason you finally break free. You were not chosen because you were weak. In many cases, you were chosen because you had learned how to carry more emotional weight than most people. Individuals who display narcissistic traits often seek partners who naturally give, support, forgive, and work hard to keep relationships together. They are often drawn to people with an extraordinary capacity for emotional labor, but where does that quality come from? For many people, it begins in childhood. If you grew up around emotionally unpredictable caregivers, frequent conflict, or inconsistent affection, you may have learned that safety depended on paying close attention to other people's emotions. You became skilled at reading facial expressions, changes in tone, and subtle shifts in mood. Without realizing it, you trained yourself to prevent conflict before it happened. If someone seemed angry, you became quieter. If someone appeared hurt, you tried to comfort them. If tension filled the room, you worked to restore peace. These behaviors often develop as healthy survival strategies for children living in difficult environments. The problem is that those same strategies can continue into adulthood long after the danger has passed. Keep listening because what once protected you may no longer be serving you. Imagine a child growing up in a home where one parent regularly became overwhelmed by stress. Instead of focusing on their own needs, the child learned to cheer that parent up, help around the house, or carefully avoid saying anything that might create more tension. Over time, caring for other people's emotions became automatic. Years later, that same pattern can quietly appear in adult relationships. Picture a first date where someone speaks disrespectfully to a waiter over a simple mistake. A person with strong boundaries may immediately recognize the behavior as a warning sign. Someone whose nervous system has been trained to manage conflict may react differently. Instead of asking, "Is this person treating others with respect?" they may wonder, "Maybe they had a difficult day," or "Perhaps I can help them feel calmer." That response does not come from weakness. It comes from years of learning that keeping other people emotionally comfortable was the safest option. The good news is that the same awareness that once helped you survive can now help you heal. When you recognize these old patterns, you gain the ability to pause before automatically rescuing, explaining, or accepting unhealthy behavior. Instead of carrying someone else's emotional world, you begin paying attention to your own. That shift is where lasting freedom begins. The qualities that once kept you stuck, your empathy, your patience, and your ability to understand others, do not need to disappear. They simply need to be balanced with self-respect, healthy boundaries, and the belief that your own emotional well-being matters just as much as anyone else's. A person with healthy boundaries often sees sudden disrespect or unnecessary anger as an important warning sign. They may calmly address the behavior or decide that they no longer wish to continue the relationship. They understand that how someone treats other people often reveals how they will eventually treat those closest to them. But if you grew up learning to manage other people's emotions, your reaction may have been very different. Instead of seeing the behavior as unacceptable, your mind may have immediately started searching for explanations. Maybe they had a difficult day. Maybe they were overwhelmed by stress. Maybe they did not really mean it. Without realizing it, you shifted your attention away from their behavior and toward finding ways to reduce the tension. You smiled, you changed the subject. You tried to make the moment feel comfortable again. People who display controlling or narcissistic traits often notice this response very quickly. They recognize someone who is more likely to absorb emotional discomfort instead of questioning it. They see a person who works hard to maintain peace even when the responsibility should belong to someone else. That does not mean you are weak. It means your nervous system learned that keeping other people emotionally comfortable was the safest way to protect yourself. Stay with me, because the quality that once made you vulnerable can also become the reason you finally reclaim your freedom. Many emotionally unhealthy people carry unresolved shame, insecurity, or emotional pain that they struggle to face directly. Instead of processing those feelings themselves, they may unknowingly place that emotional burden onto the people closest to them. They rely on someone else to carry the worry, repair the conflict, smooth over the tension, or constantly work to restore the relationship. If you have spent your life becoming the peacemaker, you may have been especially prepared for that role. You learned to endure disappointment. You learned to wait for change. You learned to keep giving even when your own emotional needs were ignored. From the outside, that may have looked like extraordinary love or patience. But in reality, it often reflected an incredible ability to survive difficult emotional environments. The important truth is this: the very strength that allowed you to endure can also help you recover. Your resilience is not your weakness. Your empathy is not the problem. The challenge comes when those beautiful qualities exist without healthy boundaries. Compassion becomes harmful when it constantly requires sacrificing yourself. Patience becomes unhealthy when it asks you to accept behavior that repeatedly causes pain. Understanding this difference is one of the most important steps toward lasting healing. Keep listening, because recognizing old patterns is where real change begins. This part can be difficult to accept, but it often brings tremendous freedom. Many people eventually realize they were not trying only to save the relationship. Deep down, they were also trying to heal an emotional story that began much earlier in life. They hoped that if they loved enough, understood enough, or stayed long enough, they would finally receive the consistent care they had always wanted. That hope is deeply human, but it can also keep someone trapped in unhealthy relationships for far too long. The good news is that patterns learned through experience can also be changed through awareness. You are not defined by the coping strategies that once helped you survive. You can learn that love does not require constant struggle. You can discover that emotional closeness does not have to be earned through endless sacrifice. You can begin choosing relationships where respect is present from the beginning, rather than something you must constantly fight to receive. As you continue healing, another important realization often appears. Many people who experienced unpredictable love early in life unconsciously become familiar with emotional highs and lows. Intense attention followed by distance, affection followed by withdrawal, can feel strangely familiar because the nervous system recognizes the pattern even when it causes pain. Recognizing that familiarity is not a sign that you are destined to repeat it. It is simply the first step toward choosing something healthier. Real love feels different. It brings steadiness instead of constant uncertainty, respect instead of confusion, and peace instead of emotional exhaustion. Once you experience that difference, you no longer mistake emotional chaos for genuine connection. It recognizes the pattern. It quietly reminds you that you already understand how this cycle works and that you are capable of responding differently. The tight feeling in your stomach, the racing heartbeat, the butterflies, the constant pressure inside your chest, none of it is excitement. It is fear wearing a familiar mask. But because fear has looked so much like love for so many years, you move toward it instead of stepping away. It usually begins so quietly that you barely notice it. You have been seeing someone for only 3 weeks. They text you every morning without fail. They send you songs that remind them of you. They tell you that you are unlike anyone they have ever known. It feels incredible. Your brain fills with dopamine and everything seems brighter. Then one ordinary Tuesday arrives and nothing comes. No message, no call. You keep checking your phone. Eventually you send a message first. 6 hours later they answer with only one word. Someone with secure emotional habits would probably think that behavior is rude. They might decide the person is inconsistent and slowly lose interest. They would naturally pull back. But you do not pull away. You become emotionally activated. Your heart starts beating faster. You check your phone every few minutes. You reread old conversations, searching for something you might have done wrong. You begin trying harder. You become funnier, kinder, easier to please, hoping to earn back the warmth that suddenly disappeared. Stay with me, because this is where everything starts to make sense. When their affection disappears, something much deeper than disappointment wakes up inside you. Your mind starts chasing the relief of getting their attention again. You are not only missing them, you are craving the emotional reward they once gave you. People who manipulate others often understand this pattern without needing anyone to explain it. Their attention comes and goes in an unpredictable way, something behavioral science calls intermittent reinforcement. Researchers have shown that this is one of the strongest forms of conditioning. It follows the same principle that makes gambling so addictive. If a slot machine paid every single time, people would quickly lose interest. If it never paid, they would leave immediately. But when the reward appears only once in a while, people keep pulling the handle, hoping the next try will finally be the lucky one. This relationship follows the same pattern. Moments of affection become the reward, while coldness, silence, or cruel treatment become the loss. You remain because you keep waiting for another emotional high. You convince yourself that the caring version is the real person and that the hurtful behavior is only temporary. You tell yourself that if you are patient enough, loving enough, understanding enough, the version you first met will return. What happens next may surprise you, because the real reason goes much deeper than the relationship itself. The truth is that you are not only connected to another person, you are also connected to old emotional wounds that were never fully healed. Deep inside, part of you still hopes that this time the distant person will finally stay close. This time you believe you can be enough to receive the love you always wanted. That is why walking away feels almost impossible, even after seeing lies, broken promises, or repeated disappointment. Your logical mind understands the facts, yet your emotional system keeps repeating the same cycle. It has become attached to the constant movement between stress and relief. A calm, steady, healthy relationship may even seem boring because it does not create the same emotional intensity. You mistake peace for a lack of connection. You mistake emotional stability for missing chemistry. Accepting this truth can hurt, but it also opens the door to real freedom. Stop calling this feeling passion and begin recognizing it as imbalance. That powerful attraction is not necessarily destiny. It is often an old survival pattern asking to be healed. It is like searching for water inside a stone because you were taught that stones were the only place where water could ever exist. The person is not completing you, they are reflecting wounds that have never fully closed. Instead of filling those empty spaces, they quietly make them even larger. And the moment you recognize that what feels familiar is actually a warning, everything begins to change. You finally understand that the anxiety in your body is not asking you to hold on. It is asking you to let go. If your body has been clinging to someone who continues to hurt you, maybe today is the day you finally listen to what it has been trying to tell you all along. It is the exact moment when your nervous system finally stops calling fear love. That single shift changes everything. In the next stage, you begin to see what happens when your body no longer mistakes anxiety for connection and how that awareness slowly takes away their control. Real healing starts the instant your survival instinct stops protecting the person hurting you and begins protecting you instead. That quiet change completely transforms the relationship. Many people believe the goal of a manipulative person is to completely destroy you. While they certainly drain your energy and leave you emotionally worn out, the truth is more complicated. They actually depend on you staying functional. They do not want you completely broken because then you could no longer meet their needs. They want you stuck in the middle, strong enough to keep giving, too tired to walk away. But they often make one major mistake. They underestimate your ability to change. They assume that because you accepted poor treatment for years, you will continue accepting it forever. What they fail to understand is that every person has a psychological limit. There comes a moment when your survival instinct changes direction. Instead of protecting the relationship, it begins protecting you. That is where real transformation starts. It rarely arrives with drama. It often appears in the quietest moments. Maybe you are driving home after another pointless argument and a deep tiredness settles into your body. It is not sadness. It is not anger. It is a calm certainty that whispers you cannot keep living this way. Stay with me, because this quiet moment changes everything. This awakening almost never happens in the middle of shouting or conflict. More often it arrives in complete silence. You are driving home from work and suddenly feel exhausted in a way that reaches your bones. Or perhaps you watch them sleeping, and instead of feeling love, frustration, or hope, you feel absolutely nothing. You look at the person who once controlled every emotion inside you, and for the first time, they seem ordinary, small, human. Real growth often requires the false version of ourselves to fall apart before something stronger can emerge. This relationship forces that process. You tried everything. You tried being the perfect partner. You tried fixing every problem. You carried the relationship, protected it, sacrificed for it, and convinced yourself that if you just loved harder, everything would finally change. Then one day, you understand that nothing you did ever truly mattered. You realize they were never really seeing you. Their promises were only buying more time. At that moment, the fear of losing them begins to disappear. It is replaced with something much steadier. You recognize that the real loss has been losing yourself. That becomes the one thing you are no longer willing to accept. What happens next may surprise you because the change is almost invisible, yet it is stronger than any argument you could ever win. You notice it in ordinary situations. It is a Friday evening. They begin another argument, accusing you of being selfish because you want to visit your family. In the past, you would have defended yourself, cried, apologized, or canceled your plans just to keep the peace. But now something feels different. Their words reach your ears but no longer control your emotions. Their anger no longer frightens you. You see the manipulation clearly, almost like watching the moving parts inside a machine. You understand they are trying to make you feel guilty so you stay where they want you. Instead of reacting, you calmly acknowledge what they said and continue packing your bag. This is the moment you stop being the target and become the observer. Their power depends on your emotional reactions. The moment you stop explaining yourself, stop proving your innocence, and stop fighting to be understood, you quietly step out of their game. Many people become frightened by the emotional numbness that follows, but it is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is your mind finally refusing to carry a burden that never belonged to you. Your exhaustion is telling you the old way of living cannot continue. It is pulling your attention away from the endless chaos and returning it to where it belongs, inside yourself. You are not emotionally distant because you are broken. You are distant because you are tired of supporting a story that was never true. You are tired of trying to heal someone who refuses to change. You are tired of ignoring your own instincts day after day. The moment you admit you cannot keep living this way, you are not surrendering. You are choosing freedom. You finally understand that the relationship has been costing you more than it has ever given back. You recognize that you have felt alone for a very long time, even while standing beside someone. Instead of frightening you, that realization brings relief. If you have already been carrying everything alone, then leaving no longer feels impossible. The strength that kept you holding the weight for so many years becomes the same strength that allows you to finally let it go. This shift deeply unsettles the other person because it removes the one thing they truly depend on. It was never simply your love. It was your emotional energy. They rely on your attention to support their fragile sense of self. Praise feeds them. Admiration feeds them. But so do your tears, your anger, your fear, and your sleepless nights. Every strong emotional reaction reminds them they still have influence over you. When you become calm, when you stop reacting, when you stop chasing answers, you quietly remove that source of power. They feel the absence immediately. Once they notice that change, they often move through a familiar pattern in an attempt to pull you back. First comes charm. Suddenly they become warm, thoughtful, attentive, and everything you once wished they would be. They may offer gifts, make promises, plan trips, or apologize for things they ignored for months. They hope those moments will erase your memory of everything that came before, but now you see the difference. You understand that this kindness is not lasting change. It is an exchange designed to win back your attention. If charm fails, guilt usually follows. They may tell you that you have changed, that you have become cold, or that you are abandoning them when they supposedly need you most. They might even create a crisis to awaken your protective instincts. They hope your compassion will pull you back into the cycle. When guilt no longer works, anger often appears next. They criticize your character, your appearance, your decisions, or your abilities because any argument keeps you emotionally connected. But this time, you remain steady. You answer with calm facts instead of emotion. You refuse to defend yourself against stories that were never true. And in that quiet refusal, their control begins to disappear piece by piece.